I'll recognize the gentleman from New York, Mr. Goldman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. O'Brien, I want to go back to where you were right there. And I think Mr. McCotter said this as well. Your interpretation is to be lawfully present in the United States with consent of the sovereign. Mr. McCotter said that's the equivalent of a lawful permanent resident. Is that correct, Mr. McCotter?
That's correct, yes.
And you agree, Mr. O'Brien?
Yes, I do.
Why is a visa holder not lawfully present in the United States with consent of the sovereign?
Well, first of all, a visa holder is a person who has a permit to board a common carrier and come to the United States and request admission. A person who has been admitted to the United States by the appropriate authorities following inspection by an immigration officer is lawfully present.
So someone with a visa, a work visa that could go on for years and years, you're saying is not lawfully present?
No, that's not what I said at all. I said a person who has been admitted in a visa classification, like H-1B, F-1, so on and so forth, is lawfully present while they're in compliance with the terms of the immigration laws.
Okay, so I agree, but you're trying to restrict this to green cards. And the problem that I'm addressing here is this executive order is not restricted to green cards. It prohibits birthright citizenship if neither parent is either a lawful permanent resident or a United States citizen. Do you agree with that, Mr. O'Brien?
Yes, I do. The court
Okay,
in Wong
thank
Kim
you.
Ark.
So in Wong Kim Ark, exactly, in Wong Kim Ark, they use the definition you just said, which would include visa holders, and yet the executive order expressly excludes visa holders. So let's move to the second point, allegiance. This is what the subject to the jurisdiction thereof that you all three of you have talked about relates to allegiance. I'd love to see a clear and definitive definition of allegiance, but let's just talk about what you all were saying. Allegiance means assimilated. Is that correct, Mr. Cooper? That's one of the things that you said?
I think that only a person, or at least an Indian, under the view of the framers of the Citizenship Clause, who had been assimilated and had left the reservation and therefore had essentially abandoned that person's allegiance to the tribe and had shifted their allegiance to the United States, just like others could have a child.
So if you move off of a tribal reservation and you move across the street at the time, where you're talking about, originalism here, and you move across the street, then all of a sudden your allegiance has changed from the Indian tribe, the Native American tribe, to the United States. That's what you're saying. Do you disagree with that?
I do disagree with
Okay.
that. I think the notion...
Is there a time requirement? You must live off of the reservation for 1 year, 2 years, 5 years?
No.
No, there's not. So this is the problem, is you start talking about allegiance and you're excluding green card holders. Now, green card holders, of course, are also citizens of other countries. And yet somehow in this definition of allegiance, that a green card holder has more allegiance to the United States than that person would to, by necessity, by definition, than that person would to a foreign country. That seems like a pretty bold statement to be asking the Supreme Court to say. And what scares me about it, as an American Jew, when Jews are often accused of dual loyalty with Israel, is you're now getting into a situation where the government has to determine which country any individual has more allegiance to. The country that they have immigrated to, and even if they're a lawful permanent resident, or the country of their citizenship. And it baffles me that the Republican Party, the party of small government, the party of federalism and states' rights, would sit here and say, yes, it is the government's job to create a definition of allegiance which somehow is required in order for birthright citizenship. Now look, Mr. Biggs, and you may not like the example, birthright tourism you call it, of someone coming into the United States, having a baby, and then leaving. If you don't agree with that, that's fine. Pass a constitutional amendment, because this is clear, and this definition that you're providing is unbelievably vague and very, very careless, and I look forward to the courts rejecting it. Thank you. I yield back.
Thank the gentleman from New York. As individuals who recite the Pledge of Allegiance down on the floor of the House of Representatives, every time we open the House, I think those of us understand what allegiance is, particularly the gentleman from Texas who wore the uniform of our armed forces. I think he's fully aware